So this one SEAL called me up, really awesome guy. And he was like, I'm graduating Wharton MBA. I was like, throw that out. And he's like, I can't decide whether to start this construction company or this software company. And I was like, okay, have you thought about doing them both? And he's like, yeah, kind of, but you're the only person that actually brought that up. And I was like, well, a construction company and a software company are very different companies. They're very different energies and uses of time that go into that. Try to do them both. You can get the software or the construction company going while you're working on the software company kind of as your side hustle. And eventually, once you get the software built, that'll take off. And so both his companies have taken off, and it's kind of cool, So yeah. I didn't tell him what he wanted to hear, but I told him the thing that was, gave him permission to go on that mission.
All right, on this episode, we're really happy to be able to have Todd in studio with us, and I appreciate you coming down here from North Georgia to come celebrate with us this episode, brother.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's an honor to be here.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. So I want to get into, where is home? Because is this home? Is Georgia home?
No. Originally from San Francisco.
Okay.
Ended up being an Army brat, moved around the country a lot, and kind of settled in Connecticut for high school, and then went to college. Joined the Navy from college.
Connecticut. Was your father already out of the military at that time frame?
His last duty station was he was in charge of the Army National Guard for Connecticut, which is not a huge organization, but they put him up there to run it.
Yeah, so your dad wasn't like, an E5 or anything.
He was going to say. Yeah, he was really proud of me when I enlisted.
So how did that go? Was it like my dad was a Navy guy and everything, so my mother told me I need to go check out all the services because I wasn't interested in the Navy. So how did it go with you?
Well, my brother had joined the Marines and become a pilot, a jet pilot in the Marines.
Okay.
So I really, by going Navy, I kind of really crossed a lot of boundaries in the family. And, I always wanted to be a SEAL. Well, from the time I joined, I was planning on being a SEAL. So that was acceptable. My brother couldn't really give me too hard of a time. And my dad was just like, I don't know how much you're going to like being an enlisted guy, but I was like, it's really the only pathway into the SEAL teams at that time for, someone with a year of college.
Yeah.
So it was, it was a good choice for me.
So you were able to go directly too. You didn't have to then choose a different, an MOS first.
I did.
Oh, you
so
did.
Yeah. So you go to and it's kind of funny. They present this program, and they'd be like, this is the dive fair program. You're going to get a chance to be a SEAL if you sign this one. And once you do, you'll be in for 6 years. And I was like, well, doesn't everybody get a chance? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, so do I have to sign up for 6 years or can I just do 4 years? And they're like, you can just do 4 years. So I was like, okay. So I signed up for 4 years and I'm in there and everybody's like, how did you get in for 4 years? And I'm like, you didn't have to sign up for 6 years.
I asked.
I asked a question, which was probably the first red flag. Military career wasn't going to last forever.
Yeah. So what was the path? You go off to boot camp first?
Yeah, regular Navy boot camp, which is super fun.
Was that up in Great Lakes?
Yeah. Great Lakes.
What time of the year?
It was March. It was there was ice on the ground, snow on the ground. It was brutal. And they didn't, and they're supposed to let you take the screening test, I think after the second week of boot camp, but before like the 7th or something like that. I took mine the 8th week, and I think that's part of the recruitment strategy of like, just let these guys get really out of shape. So the day I took my test in boot camp at Great Lakes, there were 13 guys that showed up, and I was the only guy who passed. So all those guys who joined the Navy to be SEALs, you know, lost right there in boot camp, lost that opportunity, went out to the fleet. One of the guys, though, who's a great guy, ended up cycling back through and making it eventually. And he's a hard man. But I felt bad. He had to take a 2-year detour.
Oh, man. Yeah. Well, that's what I was going to ask you too, because a lot of those guys, if they end up going to the fleet, is that the only opportunity, or do they get another shot? So
they usually I think they have to wait 2 years to screen again. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's like the 18 X-ray program. Once you fail out,
for the Army's Green Beret.
Yeah, then you go to the needs of the Army.
Yeah.
And then after a certain amount of time, you can reapply.
Right.
As, you know, to go back to selection or whatever.
Your command has to let you.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of commands that do not let them reapply.
Yeah.
Or they drag it out.
Yeah.
So when you in and you end up getting Bud's assignment and everything, take us down that path. What was that like?
Yeah, so it was a couple of months. You had to wait a couple months, then you go to Bud's. You show up to Bud's, and Grant, we're talking in the early 90s, right? So this is a long time ago. It probably hasn't changed that much, but you show up to Bud's and you're kind of overwhelmed by how many people are there to join your class, and there's like hundreds. And you're just kind of like, wow. And some of the guys are like, you're like, wow, the guy looks like Superman. You know, or whatever, you know, you're kind of like, what am I doing here? It's a little intimidating. And then you go out and take an enhanced screening test. So it's the normal SEAL screening test, just harder. And then they added dips to it. So you had to do dips on top of the push-ups, more pull-ups. I think it was a longer run, longer swim, all that stuff. And I might be getting these numbers wrong, but you know, we had somewhere over 250 guys in my class there for that.
Wow.
And I want to say about 100 of them failed that day.
The first day.
Yeah. This is before the first day of training.
Oh,
this is day 0.
This is day like -4.
This is enhanced screening test day.
Yeah. So that was, again, another thing where you're like, whoa, okay, there goes Superman. He's gone. Yeah. And then you class up. And there's a lot of guys in the class the first day, like way too many people. Like, maybe 100, more than 100 is a lot of people. Like those huge lines of helmets. I got one of those from one of my classmates the other day, of class 373 or something like that. There's like 69 helmets out there. It's a lot of helmets. Right?
Yeah.
So it's like that. There's too many guys, and they just they begin weeding people out immediately, like day one. So now Hell Week, I think, is in the 3rd week, but back then it was the 5th week. So you were really beat down by the time you got to Hell Week. And so my class, and I rolled a couple classes, but I started with Hell Week with, I believe it was 51 people. And then maybe like 22 of us came out. And then some of us got medically rolled after Hell Week. Like 5 weeks after Hell Week, I got rolled to another class for stress fractures. And
geez, that had to have sucked.
It sucked. Yeah. No, it was bad.
Wait, you had to go back day 0 again?
No, I had to go back to the day after Hell Week.
Oh, thank God you didn't have to do Hell Week all over.
Okay, so they pick a line in the sand. Like if you make it to this point, then like you don't have to respawn all the way back at the beginning. You get to save game right here and pick up where you left off.
Yeah.
Okay.
But you know, it's interesting looking back on that time. There were like a lot of guys who would get injured, and that's how they found their way out of training. And I would say half of those guys had legit injuries, and half of them that was just their way out. Right? Yeah. They didn't want to be there. But then, so I got rolled the first day of pool comp week in 2nd phase, which was, it sucked because I had these really, really bad stress fractures, but I had performed pretty well up to that point. So they gave me a lot of leniency in going back into a class. Like I was hurt enough where they could have kicked me out of training, but they kept me. So that was good. And back then they were kind of getting rid of a lot of guys.
How'd you end up getting the stress fractures?
Probably during Hell Week. Yeah. Probably during Hell Week. I was unfortunate. I'm not that tall, about 5'9", and during Hell Week, one of my friends stood on his toes and looked taller than me, and we got switched between boat crews. And so I ended up in the short guy boat crew, which was affectionately known as Sampan 6, because we had 3 Singaporeans in the boat crew 6, and I was like 2 or 3 inches taller than everybody. And so
you were the tall guy on the boat crew, so you carried more weight than everybody.
Oh yeah. It was bad. It was pretty painful. And the Singaporeans, great guys, just they're not putting out like we are.
No.
So it was kind of like being down 3 guys, and then you're the biggest guy in the boat crew. So it was a good gut check.
Yeah.
And so I think just carrying that extra weight maybe just kind of wore me down, because I was one of the quicker runners in class, and then by that first day of second phase, I was second to last. So
yes,
which is funny because the guy who was in last place graduated, and he was a total stud, but he just wasn't good at running on the beach. You know what I mean? So it happens. You know.
Yeah.
But yeah, joined another class, ended up, doing everything except one evolution kind of first time, every time after that, which was a pool comp evolution where, and this is a good example of how they mess with you in training. We were doing buddy ditch and dawn, where you basically go underwater, you take all your equipment off, give it to your partner, he puts it on, he takes it off, you put it back on, and you got to do everything perfectly or you fail. And we failed we were told, for being too relaxed.
Yeah.
What? I mean, you're like holding your breath, so we're just,
wow.
Yeah. And that guy, who's a total badass, he got dropped from our class, from the obstacle course. He's my swim buddy. And so like the day of the 5.5 nautical mile swim, he got dropped for failing the O course. Ended up coming back, making it, going in the CIA and being a total badass, great guy. But it's that tough, and I don't know how it is now, but then they were not giving out any, chits for, hey, try that again, buddy. You could fail things twice, but they didn't give you like extra, leeway.
It was the standard and only the standard.
Yeah. They're building warriors. Yeah. Right. I one time I heard this really great warrant officer. I won't mention his name, but he probably know who I'm talking about if you heard this, but he was like, if the minimums weren't the minimums, they wouldn't be minimums, or something like that. And like, so some kid was like, I'm making the minimums, and they're like, it doesn't matter, it's not good enough, which is what he was trying to say. But like, even if you like still made all the numbers, there's still a chance you could get booted for just not being good enough.
Yeah. At the end of that, how many guys end up completing it?
So I graduated with 21 guys.
21.
Yeah. I think we had 1 Singaporean. So 12 of us rolled into that class. And I think, and so I rolled into a winter class, and that class had been devastated by the weather during Hell Week. I mean, they just got crushed. And so I graduated with those guys. I like maybe 6 months ago, got a picture of them, like on the day they got secured from Hell Week, stand together. I mean, they looked like they looked like refugees.
Wow.
They just it was bad. So and it rained their whole Hell Week. It was a very, very tough Hell Week. So that was, I think 21 graduated. And it was a pretty cool experience. One of the coolest experiences, one of the hardest experiences of my life, obviously. But you learn a lot about kind of, why are you there? Why are we doing this? And it was the guys who weren't really there for the right reasons, they found their way out, but the guys who wanted to serve their country in a special way stayed. And I think, my military career wasn't that amazing. I did my enlistment, got out. But if it were all like kind of like that, I probably would have done it longer. You know what I mean? It's like once you get into the regular military and it turns into what it turns into, and you're like, what is this? You know, it just kind of, it builds that, brotherhood and that bond with everybody. And it's, I'm still, I probably have 50 text messages this week from my classmates, so it's kind of cool.
We had a saying, he's just not a garrison soldier. He's better deployed or in the field than he is just doing the regular thing day to day.
Yeah. I like, that was my problem. I wasn't cut out to be, I was like meritoriously promoted a couple times, and that was, actually one time I couldn't even get it because they said I got too many meritorious promotions. And I'm only saying that because, if you're putting out, you should get advanced, right? But the Byzantine structure of the military is like, nope, that's too much. Yeah. That's too much good stuff. We're going to hold you back a little bit, and I couldn't take that.
Yeah.
And, at the end of the day, it's I love the U.S. Navy. I love the SEAL teams. I love the SEALs. They're all amazing guys. I just don't think it was the career fit for me for the long term, and I realized that pretty early.
Yeah.
I think reading this summary shows it probably wasn't the career fit for you.
Yeah. We're definitely going to get into that because you've done quite well for yourself even after. So, what team did you end up going to?
Team 8.
Okay.
Yeah, in Little Creek. It was really cool. Right before the show, we were talking about the guy in Somalia. One of the guys had just come back. They'd come back from Somalia when I was getting there, and they'd seen like real action. That was like a big deal.
Yeah.
And so I was excited. I was like, wow, people are doing cool stuff. And then, but that wasn't really the norm. And one thing that was crazy back then was one of the guys from Somalia who's this total stud. He got kicked out of the Navy. He got his bird yanked, and that scared me a lot. You know what I mean? It was like, have you watched the Jack Carr, or the not Jack Carr? It might be Jack Carr, the Lone Wolf.
Yeah, I think that is. Isn't that?
Yeah, it's Jack Carr. Yeah, Jack Carr. But what's the name of it?
I know what you're talking about. No, I have not.
Anyway, in the Lone Wolf series, one of the guys or two of the guys get their birds yanked, and I was like, well, I've seen that before, and that's kind of scary. You do all that work, and this guy had been downrange in Somalia, and it seemed capricious to me for that to happen.
Yeah.
And he ended up doing really well. I think he ended up going to Harvard when he got out, and was, he showed them, but great guy.
When was it that you got out then?
Not too long after. So, 97.
Okay.
So I got out in 97. I did 3 years in the reserves at SEAL Team 2. There used to be a SEAL Team 2 reserve unit in Newport, Rhode Island, which was pretty cool because it was a winter warfare platoon. So we would go ski.
Spend a lot of time in Vermont.
Yeah.
Northern Warfare Center.
Yeah. And we'd go ski deep into the woods, find little cabins or make little snow caves or just put a tent up. And that was a pretty cool experience. I learned a lot. But the weekend warrior thing was, that's not, that wasn't really a good fit for me either. Yeah. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. Well, and at that time frame, I don't think it was for a lot of people, I think back then the reserves or National Guard and stuff like that kind of got a bad rap. It wasn't until maybe the GWAD days that, they end up redeeming themselves a lot, because I think back in those days it was more like you come to have a camp out and a barbecue and some beers and enjoy your friends, type of thing. You get paid for it. So.
Yeah. It was interesting. It was just not, I think all things being, I was talking to a friend of mine about getting out of the Navy, and I was trying to explain it was a decision that I regretted getting out, but it was the right decision for me. Right? I didn't want to do it, but it was the right decision to make. In retrospect, I wish I would have stayed in. I mean, I could never, you'd have to be Nostradamus to know that 3 years or 4 years later what was going to happen. But
right.
And all my friends just did so many amazing things. So it's kind of cool to live vicariously through their exploits in the teams.
When you got out at that time frame, was there like a transition assistance program or anything like that?
Yeah, it was like an hour.
Exactly.
I got a brief.
No, you went to this like auditorium with like the other enlisted people, and I think there were some officers there too that were getting out.
Yeah.
And it was an hour, I think. Maybe it was 2 hours. It was awful.
What in the world did they teach you in 1 hour, tell you in 1 hour about transition?
I don't know. I don't remember.
So it was more of like, hey, you're getting out.
Here's what your benefits are.
Oh, so it was more of that.
Yeah. It wasn't like, hey, here's how not to make a fool of yourself as a civilian.
Right. So you didn't go through like resume writing or anything?
No.
Wow.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, that had to be quite a... When you walked out the door, did you have anything ready made?
Yeah, so I was planning on going back to school, and I had some interviews lined up. One of them, interestingly enough, one of my SEAL team platoon mates hooked me up with a friend of his at J.P. Morgan at on Wall Street. So 60 Wall Street. I walk in there with a suit and tie on, and I go to the trading desk, which I think was like the 4th floor or something like that. And I was like overwhelmed, and I met these 2 different guys that ran both sides of the trading desk, and one guy wanted to hire me, and one guy couldn't get over that I didn't have a college degree. And I was like, so I was immediately annoyed, you know. I was like, and the other guy was like, dude, we're up to me. And he might have been full of crap, but they were like, hey, if you go get your license. So I went and got a job at Morgan Stanley Dean Witter, which was like a stock brokerage. And I got my licenses. And while I was there, I got a call from one of my SEAL buddies, and he was like, how'd you like to make $500 a day? I was like, oh, I love that. What do I have to do?
Right.
He's like, meet me at like Dulles Airport next Friday or something like that.
Yeah.
And we're going to Abu Dhabi. And so I went over there and was like a contractor for a few months, basically teaching their special forces how to search for underwater explosives. Which was not my specialty, but it's not that hard. I mean, they teach us how to do it, but it's not that hard to do.
Yeah.
It's hard to do if the guys that they're calling special forces like aren't special. Aren't that special.
Yeah.
You know, they had to fill that room of guys.
Yeah.
With some people that and some of them were badasses, but like half of them were like you know, there were a couple guys like signed their name with an X. You know,
wow.
Yeah, I was like, I'm like, saw a Civil War movie. So anyway, I did that, and when I came back, I got a job working with this Marine who's still one of my best friends at a company called Kroll Associates in New York, which was like a very high-end security and investigation company. So think of it as like as high end of investigations as people do. And so they hired my friend and I to work in the protection division, or the, you know, basically think of it as like a bodyguard or something like that. So we were doing those protection details. And then we came back from a detail, and it could have been like, you know, like very, very like one of the guys, very like big name from Saudi Arabia, like you would recognize, like working with him and things like that. So come back from one of the details, and the head guys of the company pull me in a conference room, and they're like, we have to send you to a client. And I'm like, okay, cool. You know, and they're like, this is different. He's like fired the last 4 people who've been here that we sent up there, and you can't screw this up. And I was like, okay, well, what am I doing? And they told me, and I'm like, I don't know how to do that. They're like, we don't care. Just go up there and make the guy happy. So it was it was the CEO of United Rentals, and so he had a investigation going on. Some people were stealing information. We figured it out in relatively short order, and I kind of hit it off with him. And he asked me to stay at United Rentals and work there. So ended up, you know, it was one of the luckiest things that ever happened to me. And I was really worried that the Kroll guys were going to be pissed. And he was like, no, they'll be happy. Don't worry about it. Like, it's fine. I've spent enough money with those guys. You know, they'll be cool about it. So I ended up working for him for
What'd you do?
I started out in corporate security, which was like just
in-house stuff then.
Like people were stealing like backhoes and driving them to Mexico, and I'm like calling the Texas Rangers and stuff.
Yeah,
we're catching these dudes, things like that. We had hundreds and hundreds of facilities. Over 10,000 employees, eventually we were smaller than that when I got there, but, just billions of dollars of assets. And so I always tell people that business is like Hertz Rent-A-Car and FedEx, like in the same thing, like you're sending things out and hoping they come back. And if you're doing your job well, there's nothing inside your own perimeter, so it's very tough to secure. And did well in that job, so they gave me more jobs, and so I ended up doing the corporate security. Like, so I did the physical security, ended up taking over the information security side of things, which I knew nothing about. And funny story, the CEO, who's this amazing guy at the time, this guy Bradley Jacobs, amazing man. He said to me, he goes, "Hey, I'm going to have you work on these 4 things." And I was like, I got to be honest, like, I only know how to do one of those things, sir. He was like, "You'll figure it out." And I was like, "Okay, as long as you're cool with that." I was like, and so ended up, really learning, and he took me under his wing and taught me a lot. And so that was like my kind of lucky break in life, working for him. He was an amazing guy.
Still hadn't got your degree or anything at this point?
No. Well, so I went to go back to school.
Yeah.
And there's a college in New York City, I won't name it. And the first day I was like, I can't deal with these people. It was not, they were not my people. It was not, and I wasn't going to do that for basically 2.5 more years. So I was like, I've got enough college. So funny story though, I went back to UConn because the company was in Connecticut. I go back to UConn, and I'm going to class one night, and Brad Jacobs is like, "Where are you going?" And I was like, I got accounting class. And he's like, "What? Like, why would you be going to accounting class?" And I was like, just going to finish my degree. He's like, "I'm a college dropout." It's like, "Oh, you don't need a college degree. You got what it takes. You can do whatever you want." And, he's like, and that gave me the confidence to be like, you know what? He's an entrepreneur. I want to follow in his footsteps and, like be like him eventually. And so that kind of, and once you make that decision, it is a, Cortez, burning the boats decision. Because it shuts a lot of doors.
Yeah. Opportunities for sure.
Yeah. But, it also brings me to the point of, I don't think the average college degree is that valuable. It's a completely overpriced, piece of parchment. And unless you're an engineer or, some specialty, it's really, really an unnecessary thing. And it bothers me to see these kids spending so much money on those things.
It's interesting to me. I won't disagree with that, but I think it also seems to be almost cyclical, or it runs where it's technical and job experience, and then education, right? They put more, and it's more about where do companies place the greatest emphasis.
Yeah.
And in some cases, it's more like the education, if nothing else, is to serve that as a young person, because you didn't join the military or something, the rite of passage was you went and you had to study. You had to put aside all the free time and everything else that you would have had partying and everything else because you had to make good grades in order to get a degree. You had to do this for 4 years. Coming out of it, you had to apply yourself in a way in which you had to follow a curriculum so that you can earn a degree. And it was more about that rite of passage type of thing. And I think it's still kind of that way. But I wish they would apply military training in much the same way and say, oh my God, if you went through that, then you're mature enough, because I would agree, an undergrad, you're not learning anything that can really be applicable in the private sector.
And, most of the guys I talk to end up becoming investment bankers or anything like that. They're like, the best training I got was that first year as an investment banker.
Yeah, right.
Everything went, so, so I think you got to have the, for some jobs, it's like, hey, the bar needs to be this high, just get in the door. And I don't disagree with that. But, depending on what path you're going down, like, the degree probably isn't bringing that much to the table.
Yeah.
You know, and it kills me. You know, I think it was George Bush who made the requirement that you had to have a college degree to join the CIA and do all these other things. And so there's a lot of great people who couldn't matriculate into roles that didn't really require a college degree, in certain regards. So with that being said, there's kind of the upper echelon of degrees that I think are very valuable. But generally speaking, a lot of these degrees are, I don't see the value in them.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally understand. I think one of the things that was helpful for me when I came off active duty is that somebody gave me an opportunity, and all I needed was somebody to open the door and believe in me. And it sounds like somebody did that for you.
Yeah. Yeah. It happened many times. I mean, I no one gets anywhere on their own. And even my, platoon mate who got me the interview at JP Morgan, that was a huge deal, right? Like, who's this kid walking in off the street? So, I'm lucky to have many people that have helped me out over time, and always tried to foster those relationships and make them better by, trying to find ways that I can, kind of keep the relationship going, if you will, by just reaching out, talking to people, I don't know if that makes sense, but
yeah,
like there's a certain, I think a lot of guys in life, they kind of focus on their comfort zone, right? Like my high school buddies or my college fraternity brothers or my military buddies or the guys I worked with at my first job or whatever it is. And they get so, into that group that they stop reaching out outside of that. And that kind of stifles, the opportunities they might have down the road. And what I do, particularly even today, you've really got to get outside your comfort zone and meet new people, take it real true, like not be a fake, but take an interest in people, really try to understand what makes them tick. And that helps you grow a network that can end up helping you.
Yeah. We had somebody on here, I think he stole the line, but years ago, we had a person that said your network is your net worth. And so, you want to cultivate it and get to know people and stuff like that, which is hard for some people. One, because they're an introvert. Another thing is that a lot of times in the military, and I know that I can say this for myself, is that we end up having, like you said, a smaller circle of friends.
Yeah.
And the thing we don't take advantage of necessarily is that maybe I have a 5 in my circle, but those 5 may actually know 5 or 10 themselves. And so if I can reach out to you and let you know that I'm looking for something, more than likely you're going to know somebody or say that to your network. And then I now have 15, 20, because I have 5 friends, 25 to, 105 opportunities here based on that network. So imagine then if we were able to, like you said, get to know even the second level better. Now you're reaching then their 5 and so on and so forth. And we don't think of it that way when we're out there looking for the next opportunity, especially if you're off active duty, you're struggling maybe I'm in this rut, I got off active duty, I took a job because it was a paying opportunity.
Right.
It's not what I want to be long term. Or you're on active duty and you think, hey, I got it all figured out. When I go out the door, I'm going to be successful. What you're describing is it's going to take a lot of help from your friends.
Yeah.
And you got to know somebody in order to get in there, because your network is really going to create it. But then you got to bring something to the table as well,
right,
and value. And I think that you did, obviously.
Yeah. I mean, I think, I kind of look back on, so guys will call me and be like, hey, I'm getting out. What should I do? And I'm like, well, what do you want to do? And they'll be like, well, I'm finishing my, business degree. And I'm like, that's worthless.
Thanks, I've got an MBA.
Want to get me started? Get me going on MBAs.
Yeah. Well, now they're a dime a dozen, but yeah.
But I kind of I always tell guys, like, chart a path to kind of a point you want to be in life. Not necessarily like the money or the job, but like, what's the goal? Like, is it to have a family? Is it to have some land? Is it to be in an organization or a club or something like that? And chart a path there, and you'll be surprised like what you'll do to get there, to like check that box. if you're just chasing dollars, you start going down paths that aren't really taking you to like that true point you want to get to. And so I kind of back them off of like, oh, what am I going to do right now? Let's think about let's think about 5, 10, 20, 30 years in advance. Where do you really want to be? And for me, going back to the Navy, I wanted to have a family someday. And it took me a while to find a wife. I'm not going to lie. Like I was not the best wife finder out there. But I actually met my wife first day in Atlanta.
Is that right?
Years ago. Yeah.
Nice.
8 a.m. Yeah.
How did it come out Atlanta?
I was walking into my first day at work in Atlanta, and she was walking in too. And the guy who hired me was like, introduced me to her. He's like, oh, you guys are going to be working together a little bit. And I was like, oh, cool.
This job's awesome.
I'm really going to enjoy that. I think she's going to be pretty creeped out. But anyway, I guess, I knew, I was like, okay, this is going to sound super corny, but like the point in life is kind of to procreate, right?
Yeah.
Like it's kind of, for most 98% of people, that's the point. And I wanted to have a family, and I had a kind of a little bit of a messed up childhood with divorces and all those things. And I didn't want to like repeat that in my family. So I was like, I want to have a good, stable family, and that'll be built on who I eventually choose as, my wife, or who chooses me. And that's super important to me. So I'm going to build towards that. Another thing that I wanted to build towards was I didn't like working in an environment where I constantly had a sort of Damocles over my neck, where it was just like, and I mean, the teams were like that too, right? Like it's like, what's the word or the saying, like one off shit wipes out 100 attaboys, and it's, committing your career, committing your trident gets pulled, and so there's a lot of downside there. And a lot of jobs are like that. You say the wrong thing to the wrong person, you lose your job. And I didn't want to be in that position either for the rest of my life. So I was like, and I was really inspired by my old boss, who was pissed that I left to go be the CEO of a startup, which rightfully so. I probably could have handled it better. But the point is, like, I wanted to be like that guy. I wanted to be like Brad Jacobs. And like, in my own way, that was me honoring him and saying, hey, I'm not as good as he is, but I want to be like that guy. I love what he has, and not that he had a sort of Damocles over my neck, but it was, even anytime, like I first worked at United Rentals, then I worked for his family office. At United Rentals, like I just saw these guys walking around, and, some of them were the best, and some of them were like scared they're going to lose their job tomorrow. Probably rightfully so, but
yeah,
I didn't want that, for the rest of my life. I wanted to have some control, be the master of my own destiny, and that's what took me down that entrepreneurship route. But that was a chart, the course I charted was build a proper family and get to a place where you want to be, in business and everything else that gives you the freedom to live the life you want to lead. Right.
Yeah.
That was kind of my thing. And that's what I tell guys now. So this one SEAL called me up, really awesome guy. And he was like, I'm graduating Wharton MBA. I was like, throw that out. And he's like, I can't decide whether to start this construction company or this software company. And I was like, okay, have you thought about doing them both? And he's like, yeah, kind of, but you're the only person that actually brought that up. And I was like, well, a construction company and a software company are very different companies. They're very different energies and uses of time that go into that. Try to do them both. You can get the software or the construction company going while you're working on the software company kind of as your side hustle. And eventually, once you get the software built, that'll take off. And so both his companies have taken off, and it's kind of cool, So yeah. I didn't tell him what he wanted to hear, but I told him the thing that was, gave him permission to go on that mission. And that kind of, that was kind of cool. But I've had a lot of those experiences with, SEALs, Green Berets, mostly. Who I've talked to.
Yeah. Well, you're giving back obviously the same way that somebody gave to you. I mean, you grew up in that company. You were allowed to excel obviously into positions of authority and reach, I think, an executive role in that company. So you demonstrated your value from the guy that walked in just doing security and everything else to then leading billions of dollars as an executive inside of it. Like you said, you wanted to go out and start your own company or everything, or go into a small company. I was going to ask you, was that your company that you started, or did you go to CEO of somebody else's company?
Yeah, somebody hired me to run their startup, their software startup. I didn't realize it because I didn't know anything about software or very much about it, but it was kind of failing. And I actually came into a very bad situation. The team was not... They weren't really working with the guy, the owner. They were kind of BSing him. And so I fired them all the first week. And I almost got fired for that. But I was like, listen, if you want to build this in a real company, we can't with this team. We're never going to get there.
You got to get the right people on the bus.
Yeah. And he was like, you're insane. I was like, I'm not working with those guys.
Yeah.
So I hired this kid straight out of Georgia Tech. He helped me build the company. He did the software development, and I kind of went out and sold it. And we built it into a real company, and it did really well. So it was like one of those things where once I determined what the issue was, and it wasn't like a problem for me to do it. I didn't really think I would almost get fired for it, but once I explained to him how bad the situation was, he was like, "Okay, I got it."
Yeah,
I'm like, "That's what you brought me here for."
Well, I think what you're doing now, though, is you're listening, the examples that you gave, you're listening to individuals kind of run through maybe what they're thinking about doing, like you said, about giving permission, but also you're probably helping them in a lot of ways, like somebody did for you, find your purpose and what you're passionate about, and put some of those skills that you have, which I think a lot of people out here may not think about, is what are the things that you're really good at that you enjoy doing, and how can we apply that to a job?
Yeah.
In a way in which you can demonstrate the value and end up making money out of it and having success, but you'll also be a lot more happy in what you're doing.
Yeah, I've got a few thoughts on that. So the passion about what you're doing thing is a double-edged sword. Right. And so a lot of times, like I'll get someone that calls me that wants to be a CEO of one of our portfolio companies. And they're like, I'm really, I want to be a CEO, but I want to be a CEO of that. And I'm like, well, you're not really passionate about being, a CEO. You're passionate about something,
what do you think that is?
Green energy or whatever. You know what I mean?
Oh, I got it.
Yeah. But if you want to be a CEO, you got to do some kind of crappy CEO jobs. You got to run some things that suck that no one else wants to run. And then you get to run the cool stuff, right? Yeah. Unless you're talented enough to go start your own thing that's that good to begin with, great. But most people aren't. So if you want to slide into a CEO role, take one that no one wants and show people that you turn into something good.
Sounds like every college football coach ever. You have to go coach at Northwest South State for 4 years and prove any type of...
Take out the trash, paint the lines on the field.
That's it. And then...
It's true.
Yeah, then you'll level up.
I mean, a lot of people that go into startups and stuff don't realize that, you may get a fancy title and all that kind of stuff, but you are cleaning the office, taking out the trash, and doing all the tough stuff that you don't have to do in other areas. But I love what you said about chasing the money. I can't tell you how many times I've talked to people that are getting off active duty, especially, and say, hey, listen, don't go after the job just because of the money. They're gonna flash green at you and everything else, and you're gonna think, oh, I'll go do that, but you're not gonna be happy at the end of the day. And so that's an important takeaway, because too often I think people are trying to chase the income and not realizing that won't provide the fulfillment.
Yeah. Also people are chasing, the business itself. It's a big company. It's well known. And that somehow some of that prestige, gets on me. Right. And that's, I'm like, the richest people I know don't work for those companies. You know what I mean? So get that out of your head and find. And so I got a great example. One of my SEAL buddies worked for a very big multinational company as like a director of training. And he was a 20-year SEAL officer. And so he's sitting there, at 40 something, next to, the 30-something guy that's doing the same job, and they're completely, he's got all this life experience and all this stuff, and he's doing the job, but it's not, it's not the same. And so when it comes to promote people, the young people are getting the promotions and he's not getting it. So I was like, listen, think about this. Think about going to work for a family-owned business and taking whatever job they're going to let you in the door at with whether it's director of training or whatever. That's a good size, And so he did that, and he took this job at this really well-run family-owned business. And then he called me one day and he's like, hey, there's this opportunity with doing this work for Amazon and nobody at the company wants to do it. And I was like, do it. And that's how I got my break with Brad. Was there's something that has to be done. No one wants to do it. And I did it, So I was like, go ask for that job, do the Amazon thing. And he turned that into a 9-figure part of that business in a few years. It's incredible. So I think, ultimately it's about, kind of taking those, paths that are a little bit, not exactly what you'd expect it to be, and then looking for the opportunities when you get there.
Yeah.
Just being a good soldier until the good opportunity comes along.
Yeah.
And he was smart enough to see it,
Yeah.
and he crushed it. So
I think a skill set that we carry from the military a lot of times is like problem solvers and stuff like that, right? But also one of the things I use to my advantage that I've seen other people do when they get off active duty is that we're gifted in that problem solving of seeing where things are happening maybe ahead of time that we need to start building a plan towards. So if you do that within your career and you start looking for the opportunities that doesn't exist, there isn't a job title for that, but there's a problem that needs to be solved. Let me figure out we can figure out what the title is, but let me be the guy that goes and fixes that problem. And that's much of what you were saying too. It's not like you don't have to look at the job board to look at those opportunities. Sometimes you can see that there's a fire over there. Go put it out.
Right. Or even, when I was at that company, Kroll, the guy who hired me, we're like, hey, there's this big opportunity to do X. And that turned into a hugely valuable part of that company. And it was, unfortunately, I was gone but they took the idea and ran with it. And just by being, additive to the conversation in a positive way and saying, hey, we're doing all this and making money over here, but like, we should take a look at this, without being threatening or a dick, can help, can help grow a company. With that being said, if you end up getting good at helping companies grow, you might want to think about running your own company eventually, just because, unless, it's just so good, you can't ever leave. But if they're walking by opportunities every day, there might be a reason for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Even if it's consulting or something of that nature. You've been highly successful, so I don't want to kind of just brush over that, because some of the stuff that you've done is you built 2 companies in the mortgage services space. One that's a transaction management and settlement system for the mortgage industry, for which you built a system from the ground up and settled over $10 billion in mortgage transactions.
Which is a small number of mortgages, by the way.
Well, yeah, I guess when you think about the size of real estate and everything, sure, especially commercial.
Yeah.
A national title and escrow agency that capitalized on the technology opportunity created by the first. And then the second company operated in 39 states and closed over 25,000 transactions at $6.25 billion while you were the CEO.
Where did you get this information?
Man, this is right off the internet.
Really?
Yeah. So, and of course, before all of this, that you were the vice president of investments for Jacobs Private Equity, which became XPO, a large $15 billion plus publicly traded transportation broker. You've been very successful along your journey, not to mention the beer was pretty cool, too, by the way. The founder and creator of Guten Beer.
Yeah.
Winner of the 2018 World Cup beer. So were you brewing in your basement type of thing? And
no, I did kind of what I did for Killcliff, which is I just came up with a formula and had it made.
Get out of here.
Yeah.
Just came up with a formula and it worked.
Well, there's companies you can hire that help you do this.
Sure.
So I had done that in the past. So I was like, I want it to taste like this. I want it to be, X, Y, and Z, and just kept getting samples. You go through that process until they get it right.
What do you think are the things that made you or helped you become successful? Maybe even going back, was it anything within the military, or what were the things that you would say if you had to point to? What was it?
You know, a lot of the skills. So being a SEAL definitely has had a big impact on me, right? Like just going through that process was really, really meaningful. And the people that I met, and that I worked with were all incredible. And I think, being around that level of excellence, kind of makes you go, well, why are we doing this half-ass? Let's be excellent, right? And so that definitely had a big impact on me. And also I saw kind of like, the point of SEAL training isn't just to weed people out. It's to prove to the guys that stay that you're capable of 10 times more than you think you are. And, crying and whining and all that stuff, it just doesn't serve any purpose. And it's probably not dissimilar to what you learn in the Army. But it's really true there, because you end up really doing 10 times more in half the time. So, I think, some of those skills were very, very important, and inculcated into me during that period of time. But then having great mentors like, Bradley Jacobs, incredible human. That was a really special relationship, and I learned a lot from him. But, there's a few things that kind of I tell like portfolio company CEOs. I'm like, a good startup CEO usually, and this isn't, universal or anything, but my experience is they have a curiosity about what they're doing. They're a good salesperson. They're a good, like kind of project manager and a good product manager. And kind of when you wrap those things together in that curiosity shell, you get these like really special people that can kind of figure anything out. So our most valuable company, I noticed really early when the CEO got on board, I mean, he might've been there a few weeks. He knew everything about it, everything. And I was like, okay, this guy is interesting. Like, he's really curious, like how every single piece works. Then he's like, this doesn't work. Get rid of that. We'll get more of the stuff that works. And so, I think what worked for me over time was being very curious about how people did what they did and why it worked or why it didn't work. And then, just engaging, like I'm in this organization called YPO. It's a Young Presidents Organization. And I get to be around tons of entrepreneurs through that. And I always want to know their journey, So like I was on an investor call today for our venture capital fund. And I'm talking to this investor who I've known for a while, but I had my partner on who's a new guy, and they'd met once before, but didn't know each other's like life stories. And the guy, I was like, could you give Admiral Sandy Winnefeld, the former vice chairman of the Joint Chiefs, your background? Because I want him to hear it. And so this guy goes into his background. It was just so fascinating to me, like how, his journey started at Georgia Tech, and he got into this business and then sold it, got into that one, sold it. It just had this incredible career. And I mean, he's been retired for like 20 years. And I think he's a year younger than me, and it's just, I'm so fascinated by other people's stories and how they did what they did. So, I think, just having a true interest in other people has been really helpful to kind of learn, what works and doesn't work.
Yeah. What advice would you give to somebody then, is that the advice you'd give to somebody that's coming off active duty right now? Because it's a different time frame, right? They may have served during the GWAT period, or they didn't serve, but more than likely they did. And so they're probably trying to figure out like, what is their value now? Because they had a role in the military in a combat downrange and everything, and they may be struggling into what's the next period after there. And a lot of guys end up going into making coffee or, t-shirts. Yeah. The things that we see a lot of and everything. So what's your advice to them?
Well, I think, first it's kind of like the Abraham Maslow, like hierarchy of needs. Like you got to take care of your needs first. But I do see a lot of guys kind of shooting for that prestige job where they should really be looking for, there's a lot of great companies out there that just need good people. And if you're coming out of the military, it's like 99% chance you're a really good person, right? And if you showed up there and just went to work with that same work ethic that you had in the military, they'll probably love you. But if you go try to insert yourself in this big corporate America, I think you're probably going to be disappointed, right? Big corporate America is like, break out the rule book. What are we doing next? It's like going back in the institution again, right? Probably not what you really want. So I think like, be careful of like kind of the false prophets of, going to these big companies.
What about the entrepreneurial route, though? I mean,
well, and then a lot of guys jump straight into entrepreneurship. I had like 6 years before I got into it, right? Or 7 years, longer than that. Yeah, over 7 years before I got into it. So I think it's something that like you can go straight into it. You can, but it's probably better as a side hustle to start than your main gig, because a lot of guys come out and they think they know everything, right? I mean, I've seen this play out over and over again where guys have they're very confident, they've got a lot of great experience, but not all of it translates. And they, kind of walk in, chest puffed out. And I think it's very disheartening of where they end up getting to with that attitude. And I think, and you see it a lot, right? It's the Army Ranger who's 32 years old sitting next to the 22-year-old Princeton grad at the Goldman Sachs trading desk. Like you hear these stories, you're like, oh, the guy must have wanted to kill that Princeton kid. But the point is, I think like, maybe, maybe those, if they do nothing else, is open your eyes to, let's take a broad look at what's going on out there. Now, with that being said, people don't have a really good understanding what's out there, right?
Yeah.
And that's why it's good for them to reach out to people and get, people with, that have a lot of experience to give them feedback on their journey and have a true interest in what was your journey like? Because I'm trying to chart my journey now.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's where, like, I know people are going to have mixed feelings about this, but like LinkedIn and stuff and those types of apps at least gives you, you can start connecting with that network that we were talking about earlier, and then it starts expanding to individuals that they know, and especially if they've been already off active duty for a period of time.
Yep.
But, we also have audience that never served in the military that might be listening to this as well, and I think your advice is the same. It's if you're looking to go into college, you're young enough to be doing it that, or you're looking at a trade school or whatever, and you want to be an entrepreneur, you think you can make it that way nowadays, on social media, everybody thinks they want to be a Insta famous, and they want to do it to where they can be a nomad and travel wherever they want to and not have to work for somebody, but get paid for content that they're delivering. So it's a very fast changing world out there as well for young people that are looking at, what is my career path? How should I go? What should I look into? Or even those who have experience of like the same questions, where should I go? How should I do it? I think you've laid out a number of different ways that they can first find out introspectively who they are.
Yeah. I mean, again, beginning with the end in mind, I think you want to chart your, like, let's pick the goal. Like what's really important to you in life, set that out there, and it could change. Like, you're allowed to change it. You can change your mind, and then chart your path there. And you might just have a much different path than you thought. I think when you get out of the military, we have a certain concept in our head of like, okay, I'm going to make this rank, then I'm going to make that rank, and I'm going to go try to get assigned to that unit or whatever. And it's just much different in the civilian world. I will tell you one thing that was really tough for me when I got out.
What's that? Is that you?
Oh, yeah. So,
go ahead. We have had everything happen on this episode so far. My apologies.
No,
go ahead.
Okay. It's okay. I thought that was me for a minute.
Yeah. I was like, where is this news coming from?
So I think one of the things was like, I was used to being around these amazing people all the time, and the civilians are different.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, they don't have that. They don't have the same, like I left 30 minutes early to get here today.
Yeah.
Thank God I did, because I would have been 20 minutes late.
Yeah.
Had I not, right? So they don't have that, right? They don't have that, most of them don't. They don't have the conscientiousness. They don't have a lot of those things that we take for granted as military people. Like, that's just table stakes. Like, we're doing that. That's obviously what we're doing. Like anything, and so that was like a huge disappointment where I was like constantly getting disappointed with people. The other thing that was tough for me to wrap my head around was, kind of the honorable course, being an honorable person and doing things the right way and so on and so forth. And when I look at my career, it's interesting, right? So my partner that I founded my venture capital fund with now, he's a Naval Academy, F-18, NFO. His dad was a Navy captain. I think he was like a destroyer commander or something like that. And he and I just clicked, right? We've got that same thing going on. Our new partner, who's, Admiral, same thing. It's just like we know we have each other's backs and we have to get the work done that we need to get done. And it's interesting that I've gravitated back towards that, right? That now my inner circle is that. And over time, you'll pick up people that you're like, okay, that's a reliable person, everything else. But then you also see people that are very successful, but how they got there is not the journey I want to take. Right. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to cut that corner. I'm not going to rip that person off. I'm not going to do that thing to get there. Sure, hard decisions are going to have to be made in business over years of doing it. But at the same time, hopefully most of it is, done right. And that was like, I was like, wait, these guys are making money by screwing those guys over? Like, that doesn't seem right, and I can't even like get in the headspace to be like, how did they start doing that to begin with, Yeah. But it's how some people do it. But I think as far as people, kind of figuring out what they want to do next, if you can really take a true interest in other people, you'll find the path you want to go down, but it's got to be genuine. You can't fake it. Like, I'm really curious what other people are doing and how they're doing it. Like, I care. And then, what can I do to help them? A lot of the time it's have you ever read the book, Give and Take?
No.
Yeah.
Who's it written by? Don't mean to put you on the spot. I can go look.
I forget.
We're going to look it up.
Look it up. But it's, basically the concept is there are givers, takers, and matchers. And the most successful people, when they study this stuff, are the givers. And so you can't go out into the world and be a taker, right? And some guys get out of the military with this like, I'm owed X, because I did Y, right? And that's just not true. People care and they're like, thank you for your service, but they're not gonna, they're not gonna be like, oh, well, you're like some demigod because you served a few years in the military. Right? Yeah. So I think that, ultimately, figure out how to give back and you'll get a lot in return, but you can't be a matcher. You can't be like, I'll do this if you give me that. Like, and if something comes your way, great, but not everything is a transaction.
Yeah,
right?
Quid pro quo.
Yeah.
And but if you can take a true interest and like, hey, well, I've got a friend who has a company that does that. I can introduce you, right? I make a lot of introductions that go nowhere, right? But nobody's like, oh, Todd made another introduction. I have one friend that does that to me. Todd sent me another deal. Great, but most people are pretty grateful. And a friend of mine who I call my fundraising spirit guide is he kind of taught me, everybody you're raising money from, like there's a transaction there, they're going to invest in your thing and so on and so forth. But he builds these relationships up over decades. Mm-hmm. Like for 20 years, he's been sending them an article or sending them a deal that's outside of his wheelhouse, but might be in their wheelhouse, or introducing them to someone that's influential that could help them with something, just because it's building that network, because that's your net worth. right? But you got to think about the networking. It's kind of like a mushroom cloud because you get like a lot of false starts. You're like, oh, it's not really, this networking thing is bullshit. Ehrlich's full of crap, right? Like at the end of the day, it kind of, it's got a pretty tight radius, and then boom, like the network is connecting with other networks, and it's a real amazing thing.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know if that answered the question, but
no, it definitely did. It was a great answer. And so looking at like you giving back, it sounds like you're doing a lot of mentoring and coaching to other people and stuff that may be struggling or just looking for new career paths. Talk a little bit about the foundation and stuff that you belong to. And they're the ones that reached out to us and said, hey, love to have somebody that represents or at least knows about the foundation come on and talk about it. So maybe this is a great time to talk about another way of giving back.
Yeah. So maybe I can give you kind of the genesis story. So when I got out of the Navy SEAL Foundation did not exist. And that actually really bothered me. I was like, okay, so if I die, so one of my buddies got killed in training, and he got like his family got $100,000 of SGLI, which I think it's called.
Right. Yep.
And I was like, that's not gonna cut it. You know what I mean? I was just like, that's not cool. And I was like, there's got to be some other safety net here. So, in 2001, the Navy SEAL Foundation started, and it was started by a group of incredible people. Many of them were SEALs and other, people that had a genuine interest in giving back to the community. A few years later, one of my close friends and classmates was killed in Afghanistan. That deeply bothered me, as you can imagine. And I felt useless. I felt like, and I didn't have, the spare cash to be donating to the Navy SEAL Foundation. So my brainiac idea was I was going to start a company, and I could take money from that company and give it to the Navy SEAL Foundation. So that was Killcliff. And so that ended up being this thing where one day I get a call, and I'd hired another SEAL, Chris, who set this meeting up to be, one of my teammates, to be kind of the Navy facing guy on the team. And we were just sending checks to the Navy SEAL Foundation. And they were like, they called up and they're like, we'd like to have a meeting. And so I'd gotten permission to say we give money to the Navy SEAL Foundation by one of the original board members. And he was a legendary SEAL too. And so we were just sending money. And so people were calling them saying, who are these Killcliff guys? And do they give you money? And they're like, yeah, they do, but we've never talked to them, And so we had a meeting with them, and that's where we came up with this, or they came up with this concept of be an official partner of the Navy SEAL Foundation. And interestingly, they were like, everybody calls us and asks us for stuff. You just gave us things. And so we would like to do this. And so it was like, we're giving, not taking. And then it turned into something cool. Right. And so that company, Killcliff, we had given over, and the inspiration was my classmate, Tom Retzer, but we given over $1 million to the Navy SEAL Foundation. And so, which is great. And I wish everybody would do that. Right. But they raise a lot of money to give to the needs of the special warfare community. So that would be the SEALs, the SWCC operators, and all those folks. And they do a lot of amazing things, from scholarships to assistance in the event of a death. They even do these great camps for the kids, because they're like you were saying, the dads are gone so much, right? And they take the kids to these camps, and they get to know other kids that are in a similar situation, and that helps them. And I mean, it's just been an amazing organization. It's run by this incredible woman named Robin King, whose husband was a Master Chief Navy SEAL. He's a total awesome guy. So it's a really all around. They've done so much for that community, and they keep expanding the mission to help more people and broader in the community. And I look at them as kind of the most important organization. And there are many other organizations that do similar things, and they help out with that too. But that is the granddaddy of the foundation. So I'm an ambassador for them. So that might mean I might try to bring them donations or, do something like this. But I'm a huge fan. I couldn't be, more grateful to be involved and for the work that they've done.
Yeah, no, it sounds amazing. I think a lot of people, they hear about these different foundations or nonprofits that are assisting veterans or their families and stuff like that. But, someone like the Navy SEAL Foundation, who's been around as long as they have found different ways to, because it changes and evolves all the time, of how families or former veterans and stuff that are SEALs need assistance in different ways. And so I've always appreciated them for what they do as well. I want to say that when we came on board in 2015 and everything, I want to say that they were one of the first ones that actually we followed one another on social media and have been together for the whole time frame. So this is kind of a great full circle to have you come in and also talk about them and the amazing things that they're doing. So really,
the whole team is amazing. They do all these great events. It's a very, very, very cool organization. And, I think, and if you think about it, like your military guys will understand this, but the other people don't. People don't realize how little money military people make, right? Yeah. And, there's so many things that can happen in life. Like you have a child, and that child has a disability or something like that. And all of a sudden you're in a position where you're like, okay, cool. I mean, when I got out, I was making $18,500. That was my basic pay, I think.
Yeah.
Like it's basic.
Don't spend all that on one play.
Hey, listen, I got jump pay and dive pay. and then they wouldn't give you the demo pay. Well, you could only have 2 specialty pays. You couldn't have the third one. I was like, what? But I'm doing the demo. I'm a breacher. I'm doing the demo. I'm jumping. I'm diving and I'm doing the demo.
It's too much money.
Yeah, no,
too much money, Todd.
I was getting loaded, So the extra $100 a month. But they don't realize how little money we make. Right?
Yeah.
And so
that you're going to pay taxes on it. That's another thing a lot of civilians don't realize. Right.
Unbelievable. Yeah. You're like, this is my paycheck. I remember that first paycheck I got, I was like, what the is this a joke? I had to pay for my uniforms? Sweet, so anyway, and that, life happens and something serious happens and there's no safety net for these people, but the husband is deployed or he's on a training mission for the next couple of months or whatever it is. And he can't, you're not allowed to have a second job, and the wife can't work because she has to take care of the kid or whatever. They don't realize that. And that's, one of the very quiet things that gets handled by an organization like Navy SEAL Foundation is that family assistance. Because, frankly, I think they should pay our warriors a lot more. Like if I were the president, I would be like, how much are we paying these guys? That's not enough. Like more, like
tax free. No,
and tax free. Yeah,
right. I mean,
it's so stupid to tax them, and I mean they just don't get paid enough. I mean, and going back to it's all risk and no reward, right? Like okay, you get your leg blown off, you get a 30-cent thing, a medal, and you got to deal with that the rest of your life. Yeah, that's tough. I mean, you get disability pay, but a big deal,
right?
Is that even enough to cover? Yeah. It's not, so I feel really strongly. And I mean, I think that in general, people feel very strongly about the military and how they can help. And the Navy SEAL Foundation, like I said, is the granddaddy of these in my world. And that's, what I, kind of was lucky enough to be involved with early. And I've seen the great work they do very quietly on the sideline, getting the updates. And I love it. And it's an incredible group of people. So
what's next for you, Tom?
So I run a venture capital fund and we invest in defense tech. We started out in software, but we kept getting defense deals. So we're like, okay, fund 2, we're going to do defense. So I got my Navy partner, the F-18 guy, and then I was very lucky to meet the former vice chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff on a pheasant hunting trip, and I said, what do you think about early stage defense tech? And he was like, I love it. Here's why. And we kind of got in this whole conversation, and I asked him eventually to join us in our firm. So we're basically looking for interesting investment opportunities in defense technology where we can help with the mission of being prepared to fight whatever comes, right? And do it as rapidly as possible. Meaning it can't be the way it's been. But we can't, like, my Admiral Winnefeld always says, 10 years ago when he was pitching this in the Pentagon, people were very tied to their vanity metrics of, we got this many tanks and we got this many soldiers and this many ships, and he was trying to say that doesn't matter. Like, there's so many different ways to there's so many ways coming to fight war. So we're investing in companies that are going to accelerate that process. It's very exciting. It's actually now probably the coolest thing I've ever done.
I'm going to say right now, the cutting edge technology that's available out there. We did a whole show about, the advancements from China or in the advancements of drones and technology and everything else. And, like we had one of the former pilots from the Air Force talk about how instead of going out and buying, $1 billion aircraft, you could buy $10,000 drones and create the same payload that you would for that aircraft. Yep. And if half of them get shot out of the sky, okay.
Yeah, it's attritable warfare. Yeah. It's funny. So a little bit over a year ago, I was sitting with my dad on the couch. He was 90 at the time, and he was about to pass away, and he did. It was a second to last conversation I had with him. And we were watching the news, and he was an armor colonel. So he was obsessed with drones and the Ukraine war. And he would say, boys, these, everything's changed. Tanks aren't the thing anymore. And one of my brothers would be like, oh, don't say that, Dad. Tanks are always going to be a thing. And I was like, no, they're not. Like, they're screwed. Tanks are screwed. And he was like, Todd's right. And hell, like, yes, finally I'm winning these arguments. but he, just when it was him and I talking, he was convinced at 90 years old that this was changing. And so then randomly, a few weeks later, I meet Admiral Winnefeld and we're talking, and I've kind of like leaned in this direction that I wanted to do defense technology. And that's how we got in the space. But it's changing so rapidly. You've got a convergence of robotics, AI, and material science all kind of taking place at the same time. What's really interesting for us is, fortunately, as all those things converge to create new products that are rapidly able to be scaled up, there's a total change in procurement happening. So like maybe 4 weeks ago, there was this concept that went on for decades at the Pentagon called JASIDS, which was basically like how they created requirements for what they were going to buy next. And it could stretch things out for decades and stifle innovation, because some general's like, hey, the strap on this, backpack needs to be able to hold 75 pounds, not 72, right? And they got to rebuild the whole thing. So anyway, the point is that whole, schema of how things were procured is getting turned on its head. And then with kind of the rapid advancement of what's gone on in Ukraine and Russia, and with China simultaneously, and even like, hey, the Iranians have pretty good drones, right? Like, and they're building them super cheap. So all these things happening simultaneously, it's like now or never. We either move now or we're screwed. So it's getting the right attention, and I think for me, being part of this this chapter in our national journey is a very exciting thing for me to be involved in with my team. I think I was looking at a chart the other day, and it was like a venture capital chart of different things like venture capital was investing in over the years, and it was like in the 40s or something was the last time like venture was put into into a defense business.
Oh, I could, yeah. You think about World War II and everything.
Yeah.
Never thought about it that way because there's such a rush like there is for, well, we did an episode actually on this. By the time this episode airs, we'll have already dropped it for sure, but about technology advancements and brought in 2 active duty colonels and stuff from the Army to talk about what they're seeing currently right now and what's been tested and stuff like that. But you think about those advancements and what's happening, it's like an arms race. Except it's a technology race right now, and you're right in the thick of it. Your venture capitalist, mindset, and trying to support a lot of these companies. So does that mean you go to SHOT Show as well? People are going to see you there.
I've went to the SHOT Show once.
He said that was enough for him. We've seen enough pictures that we like to stay here.
Yeah, I went once.
What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas.
Yeah, I think there's in fact I tell guys getting out, one cool thing is the burgeoning defense tech sector and all the things being built, because it's going to be munitions to drones to subsea, underwater unmanned vehicles. I mean, it's everything, and it's really cool stuff. So there's lots of opportunities there, and then space. The stuff that's happening in space is frankly remarkable to me. Remarkable. So there's going to be, there's stuff happening in space that there was an article a week or 2 ago, and it was about a German satellite was getting chased by some Russian satellites. That's happening. That's happening. Yeah.
There's like gazillions of satellites.
It's on.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Crazy stuff is happening. Yeah.
Well, and then you got Elon that's wanting to go to Mars. So
yeah. Well, God bless that guy. Right. So last year, SpaceX launched 90% of the satellites in orbit. 90%. Yeah. So he's brought the cost to launch down so low that now all these other new technologies can get launched that will help us. Yeah. So not only did he save us with Twitter, which I was a big fan of because I couldn't even be on Twitter before, but he did, in free speech, right? But this SpaceX thing, and even Tesla at a certain level, is game-changing technology, and he is,
Optimus, his robot that he has.
It's pretty cool stuff.
No, it is really cool stuff, especially when you're trying to look at that from a defense standpoint. So it sounds like you're right in the thick of it.
Oh, yeah. Well, I got certain feelings on robots. Robots that are like humans use a lot of energy to stand, and balance themselves. And then robots that are like dogs, similar, and they both have really tough time getting over certain kinds of terrain. So we're looking at different types of robots.
What are you talking about here, Todd?
Hovercraft robots.
Well, a drone is technically a robot, but that's not what I mean. I'm talking about ground-based robots. But there's some really fast
non-humanoid looking. Then
no, they do not look like humans. No, but there's some really fascinating technology that's going to come out. It's like really, really, really cool stuff.
All right, we're going to have you come back and tell us about it. We're going to have to do the other Todd show that talks about technology advancements in defense warfare and such, because I think once it launches, you can talk more about some of the stuff that's going on out there. I wish I'd have met you actually prior to us doing that episode.
Him and Maudlin, because we could get the defense side, but then you get the money side from him, and what are people investing in? What technology is.
It would have been really good for you to have been on that episode to hear those guys talking about some of the things that they're concerned about. Obviously, the race here is to make sure we have control and that there's always going to be a human in charge, control meaning like U.S.
Yeah.
But then there's always a human in charge control aspect of it as well, because, anytime.
Skynet.
Yes.
It's Skynet.
There's a bunch of movies that say it's a bad idea.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it probably is a bad idea.
Yeah.
But one of the robots that we're looking at would give you nightmares. It would give you nightmares.
Dang, Todd.
And that's the teaser.
Thanks for that. Appreciate you coming on, brother. Really do, man.
Great meeting you.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.